As the debt ceiling crisis continues, Yellen warns that the stock markets could tumble as much as 45%. This week, we're going to talk about the U.S. debt ceiling, the crisis that's happening there, as well as how generations shape money. Now, on the lighter side, we're going to take a look at how birth order affects your personality and maybe just how well you're doing in your career. Hope you enjoy. As negotiations continue for the debt ceiling, this might be resolved by the time you see this, although it does seem, as I'm recording this on Wednesday, that they aren't very close to resolve. Either way, this has been a very interesting topic, and I think that we should really dive into how it's happening, as it's had major impacts on the financial markets, as we've seen reactions both to positive and negative news in recent days. Essentially, within a couple of weeks, the U.S. government could be unable to pay its bills, with the Treasury Department warning this could occur as early as June 1st, which at the end of May here, we're very close to that deadline. Currently, this fiscal year, the U.S. government will spend about $1.5 trillion more than it collects in revenues. It covers this deficit the same way we do with our spending when our spending is higher than our income. We borrow money, and that's exactly what it's done. Since being created in 1917, the ceiling has been raised almost 100 times, so this is really nothing new, and it's been raised under every president since Eisenhower. The U.S. has never defaulted on its debt, but the current political system in the U.S. is really more divided than it's ever been. Both the Republicans and Democrats are really politicizing this, with the Republicans pushing for sharp spending cuts, to which the Democrats are really pushing hard back on. Like most governments around the world, the U.S. has been running at a deficit for many years, which basically means they're spending more than they're bringing in. This can be attributed to a number of factors such as the wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, the Great Recession, the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as just several other factors along the way. Presently, the Republicans hold the majority of the House, while the Democrats hold the Senate majority. This makes it extremely difficult to pass any legislation without major concessions from both sides. As it stands today, the U.S. can borrow up to $31.4 trillion to pay its bills, with the last increase in December of 2021. As of last Wednesday, the government actually owes more to its creditors than its actual debt limit. So it owes a total of $31.46 trillion, according to the U.S. Treasury. The last time the nation got this close to default was back in 2011, which really sent the stock markets tumbling. So I don't know if you remember back in 2011 as this occurred, but there was a lot of things that happened in the U.S. Around this. Investments fell a lot with the Standard & Poor at that time decreasing the U.S. credit rating as well. Although this might really sound like a U.S. government issue, the repercussions could really affect many inside and outside the nation. We're already seeing the ebbs and flows in the stock markets as talks pick up and then fall apart, but it has the potential to really inflict pain in several different areas. Both chambers of Congress were in session for the last time in May last week and aren't actually scheduled to overlap again until June 6th. So if they're going to be hitting their credit limit on June 1st and they're not coming back together until June 6th, we're looking at potentially some more issues here. What exactly happens if U.S. government defaults? If we look back again to 2011, we can see that what can happen if they get close to a default, and imagine that being magnified if a default were actually to happen. Moody's has warned that the credit rating agencies will again downgrade the U.S., which could have a ripple throughout the financial system. Some of the dire warnings that they've predicted is that the 50-year low unemployment that we're currently seeing could rise to about 5%, and they have a worst-case scenario of about 8% on that side. Yellen also suggests that the stock prices could fall as much as 45%, and Moody's could see about $10 trillion in household wealth wiped out. They're even predicting that a brief default, so this doesn't have to go on for a very long time, could really drive up interest rates, further affecting mortgage and loan rates, which have already seen a lot of increases over the past year and a bit here. Again, using the 2011 debt ceiling crisis as a template, as the U.S. grew closer to not being able to pay their debts, many federal employees were sent home without pay. This is something that could also occur as we get closer to defaults happening here in 2023. Looking to Canada, where most of you are likely residing, this could have a huge impact on Canadians as well, as we're so interconnected with the U.S. and they make up about 75% of our overall economic trade. So hopefully the U.S. can put their political agendas aside, come to an agreement here so that we're not seeing, good, hardworking people like you and I having to deal with more increases in interest rates and unemployment and different things like that. Have you found yourself having a conversation with somebody who just swears by GICs while you feel that the only way to invest is by picking a diversified stock portfolio? How about that person that's quite comfortable taking on a 30-year mortgage and never put an extra dollar down on it while you're busting to make sure that you're debt-free as quickly as possible? People from different generations who earn different incomes, born in different economies, have different ideas about money. Much like life itself, what we experience firsthand is more compelling than what we learn secondhand. Take, for example, the person who was born in 1970 and saw the S&P 500 increase almost tenfold during their teens and early 20s. If you happen to be born in the 1950s, for example, the stock market went nearly nowhere, adjusted for inflation during the same impressionable period. So how could these two people not have vastly different outlooks on what the stock market is? Your personal experiences make up about 1/1,000,000th of what's actually happening in the world, but maybe 80% of how you think the world actually works. Charts can model stocks, declines, and gains, but it really can't model that feeling of coming home, looking at your kids, and wonder if you've made a huge mistake that will impact their lives forever. In reality, people should be making their investment decisions based on their goals, but instead invest heavily based on experience of their own generation. If people grew up during high inflation, they typically will invest more in bonds. If they grew up during a great stock market run, they'll typically lean more towards equities. The way we tend to invest doesn't really rely on intelligence, education, or sophistication, just dumb luck on when and where you were born. We've all at one time or another looked at someone and just knew they were that middle child, or when that person told us they were the youngest, it just made sense to us. The birth order has been long used to predict and explain success, prosperity, and behaviors, but does it really affect who you are and what you do in life? In the 20th century, researcher Alfred Adler developed a theory on birth order, and in it he claims that the order in which a child is born shapes their development and personality. Today, many psychologists still believe that where you fall in your family's birth order can have a major impact on your personality and development. So let's have a look at where you're born and see what it tells us about your actual personality. If you were the firstborn, you had your parents all to yourself for at least a period of time. Parents with their firstborn also tend to be extra careful, protect them from those bumps and bruises, maybe a little bit more bubble wrap on that. They also are really early to educate and tend to dole out more attention. Your parents still might have been stricter with you, often pushing you to set an example for your younger siblings. So this could really be the reason why it's more likely that you demonstrate leadership skills and might have already seen or be a leader in your workplace. The stereotype is that the middle child is usually the peacekeeper of the kids. Because the middle child has to carve out their own niche in the family dynamic, they tend to enjoy negotiation and compromise more than the other siblings. The middle child can go one of two ways typically, becoming competitive with the older sibling, trying to break their sports records or getting better grades, or they might have behaved more rebelliously. The baby of the family, according to Alder, can go one of two ways as well. The first path is that clear journey to success. The youngest becomes the go-to person in the family, helping out and taking on extra responsibilities. On the other side, the youngest could be avoidant if they lack the confidence to excel. Of course, birth order, like most things in life, is very complex and there's no real one-size-fits-all for every family. Age difference between the kids, cultures, and capacity of the parents all play a role in how the child is raised. And when it comes to twins, well, they typically get special attention from the parents, so these rules don't typically apply to them. Well, that's it for this week. Hope you enjoyed. See you again in a couple of weeks. If you have any questions on the debt ceiling and what you should be doing with your investments, please feel free to reach out. If you are in the public markets, you might want to have some look at some alternatives and make sure that you're invested in something that's not going to have these ebbs and flows that you're seeing. If you are lucky enough to be in the private investments, like many of our clients, you'll probably have a little bit of a different experience going forward here on this. See you again in a couple of weeks. Take care.